I'd like to welcome everybody into our room, wherever you're from, cocktail or coffee or whatever. We're focusing on how we can become the ancestors that we want to be. So that's what we're going to explore in our little groups, and how we, as members of this organization, can help each other to move in that direction. So as we start this gathering, I would like to acknowledge that the land I am speaking from is the ancestral home of the Anishinaabe people. The Brisbane UUs use these words of acknowledgement. We join them, the custodians, in respect and caring for this place and all of the earth. Really nice meeting. This meeting came from the initiative of the membership committee. I'm Lee Bokie-Burke, and I'm the newest member and deputy chair, I guess is my title. I've been around the Tuesday morning gatherings for a while and active in UU international work for over 20 years. I recently also joined the UU Advocacy Committee. And I find that the IWC brings out my inherent enthusiasm and a bunch of ideas. With us also in this room are the two other we're a little committee, two other hardworking committee members, Genya. There you are. I mistook you. I mistook you for a Queen Mother. She is our coordinator, and she sends out thank you notes and thank you letters, and she brings invaluable expertise from having set up and run her own NGO that helped educate girls in Ghana before education became freely available. And of course, of vital importance is our committee chair, Renee Hills. She is the committee's representative on the IWC board. She sends out reminder notices when your membership is due and keeps our committee ship afloat with dedication and creativity. So as a committee, we wanted to celebrate you, our members, and to acknowledge how important it is you all are to our organization. Your contributions help keep the IWC running. Okay, we have a slightly different format tonight than we do for our Tuesday morning things that I know many of you have been to. Instead of doing our check-ins popcorn style, where you just kind of fit in wherever you can, I'm going to call on you. And we would like you to tell us your name, where you're from, where you were born, and either who you're dressed at or who you're thinking of right now and why she inspires you. And since there aren't a whole lot of us here, you don't feel too crunched for time. So I will start with Genya.
Hi, my name is Genya Peterson. I live in a very small town, River Edge, New Jersey, which is 7 miles from New York City, if you go in a straight line. I was born in a very, very little hamlet in Hoffenfels, Germany, and I was actually born in a displaced persons camp. I am feeling excited today. And partly, I am not somebody who would naturally dress up. I'm fairly conservative and quiet. But today, I am wearing the dress and the beads that the Queen Mothers of the Manyakovo region presented me with. I was one of the co-founders of the UNO office, Every Child is Our Child. And the Queen Mothers were an amazing group of women that we partnered with in Ghana and ran a very successful educational program the office did. And at that program actually educated over hundreds of children through elementary school. So I'm inspired by their work and their commitment to better their community and the world at large.
Gretchen.
My name is Gretchen Oman. I live in a small town in southwestern Michigan. I was born about 100 miles from here, and I've lived in Michigan all my life. So, not not a wide-ranging sort of thing. I'm dressed this evening as my mother, who was an inspiration to me in a lot of ways. Our family life wasn't perfect, as no one's really is, but she had a lot of strength in her, and I know I've taken a lot of lessons just from seeing how she would handle things and the kind of things she would do as a single mom in the 70s. She just had a lot to push uphill back in the day. So I don't know if I have anything else to add.
For now. Juliana.
Okay, I'm Juliana Lytle. I live in Los Angeles County, California, in a town called San Dimas, which is close to Claremont, which is more familiar to many people. I moved here a little over 2 years ago from the panhandle of Texas. I was born in St. Joseph, Missouri, and grew up on a farm in Northwest Missouri, part of which I still own. I grow corn and soybeans. So yes, I know how to drive a tractor, cut cattle, brand cattle, all that sort of stuff. I'm not doing that now, but I know how. I'm also a horse person, though I don't have any horses here. I guess I was thinking about what women do I most admire? My mother, but also my mother's sister, who never married, lived to be 94, and pretty much did whatever she damn well pleased. That was sort of her attitude about life. She liked antiques and fancy clothes. And yeah, I mean, she would come to visit me. Sometimes I did things that my parents didn't always approve of. My aunt didn't care. She'd come to see me no matter who, what, or what I was doing, because it didn't matter to her. She didn't care what people thought at all, I don't think. Or she certainly didn't act like she cared. And back when most women did care. And in terms of where people have lived, I think I've lived in 8 states. And a little while in Mexico. So I've been exposed to a lot of places.
Thank you. Julia.
I'm Julia Harris. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Was born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and I don't know if people still remember that song, but I always met by. I'm an Okie from Missouri, and went to the University of Arkansas, and then came back to Oklahoma after I graduated. Taught in Bartlesville, which is what at that time was the home of Phillips Petroleum. So it was highly educated community, lots of PhDs in the research center and all. But I moved to Tulsa in 92, divorced after 20 years or so, because I was all the time coming to Tulsa and coming to church here, as well as bringing my kids for lessons and things like this. So here I am. Both my grandmothers have such difficult stories of difficult lives. I don't want to, go into this, but they either through the death of a husband or the murder of a husband were raised children on their own back in, the teens and 20s, and lived through it. I was privileged to spend a lot of time with my maternal grandmother. After I was a certain age, I would go to her house after school and in the summer when my mother went back to work. I grew up on a farm, lived on a farm all that time, which I'm grateful for in many respects, but it was also very isolating. But anyway, I got to spend time with my grandmother, who taught me how to embroider, and we quilted, and we did all kinds of crocheted, all those kinds of things. And this question caused me to recall the early days of our women's circles, our women's spirituality circles. And one of the things we would do would be to honor our ancestors and relay something that we learned from them. And I still give the same answer, and that is, my grandmother taught me that the backside of the embroidery was how that looked was just as important as the front side. Of course, that's a metaphor, but yeah. So that's the way, and you leave things better than you found them. So
Thank you. Rainey?
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. My name's Renee Hills. I, as most of you have heard, live in Brisbane in Queensland in Australia. I was born about 600 kilometres north of here in a little town called Mackay, and I grew up on a sugarcane farm in a beautiful valley. It's very, very tropical and hot most of the time. I've lived in two different. I've lived in Melbourne, and I've also lived in Darwin, which is in the Northern Territory, probably almost as far north as you can go in Australia, quite close to East Timor, and not so far from Singapore. So also a very, very tropical, interesting place, like nowhere else in Australia, actually. It's a great blend of cultures there. So today I'm dressed as my grandmother, on my dad's side, or I'm trying to be dressed as her. In about 4 years' time, it'll be 100 years since she was married in Mackay, in a simple church wedding, having come to Australia just a few months previously, I suspect in an arranged marriage, from Italy. She travelled out on a passenger ship, which probably was not very salubrious because it took 6 weeks to get to Australia, and she was so ill on the trip that she never ever could face the journey back. And she married my grandfather, who had a small sugarcane farm, and she worked extremely hard, and she did physical labour, covering in the plants after they'd been planted, the short billets they put in the ground. There's a story about she had my dad on a rug out in the paddock when she was working, and one day a wallaby jumped right over the top of him. Lucky it was a wallaby and not a snake. Anyway, she had a very hard life, but she was very always just so loving and hospitable and kind to us, her grandkids, who could actually barely understand her because, unfortunately, we only learnt English. We didn't really know any Italian, and her English, there were no English classes in those days. They were very, so her English was never very good. But I feel very connected to her because I spent a lot of time with her when I was small. So I'm honouring the spirit of my grandmother today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ginger?
Okay, I'm Ginger Brewer. I live in Seattle, Washington. Today, I'm honoring my mother, who was Anna Elvira Backstrom Brown. And she was born in Lehigh, Iowa. And I was born in Seattle, Washington, not far from here. And before I landed in West Seattle in 2000, I went off to school after high school to the University of Chicago, and I came back to Seattle and finished. Then I finished I have an art degree from the University of Washington. So that's the kind of story of my life. And so we'll get, you'll learn more when we're in small groups. I will take off this hat by just wearing it because mothers, in the 30s and the 40s, women never left the house without a hat on. So that's why I have a hat, but I don't like to wear hats. So there's just things for the next generation. And so if that's all right with you, I'll just keep my hat off. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Connie?
Hello, everybody. I'm Connie Gibbons, and I'm in Melbourne, Australia. And I've lived here about 37 years, but I was born in the States in Rhode Island. And I've lived a lot of places in my life. With my family and a lot with work. I've lived in Panama and Puerto Rico and Wellington, New Zealand, and London, and then ended up here quite a while ago. So I'm pretty settled here in Melbourne now. I'm honoring my mother, and I'm wearing this T-shirt that my mother got when she went to the March for Women's Equality in 1989, and she also had a T-shirt like this that she wore, but she bought this one and sent it to me in Australia. And I honor my mother because she was brought up very traditionally in a very conservative sort of household, but she raised us all as Unitarians, and she had 5 daughters that she raised to be strong and independent, and fiercely independent, I would have to say, and well educated, and certainly independent thinkers. She was always into that. So that was why I honor my mother today.
Thank you. Carol?
Hello, I'm Carol Houston. I am here in New York City. I live in Manhattan, Washington Heights. I was born in Akron, Ohio, the rubber city. The male members of my family all worked for, New York City. Okay, it goes past quickly. The sounds of the city. All of my male members of my family worked for the rubber companies, for Goodyear, Goodrich, and Firestone. So that's what it was to be in Akron. I've lived in 7 different states, 12 different houses and apartments, and actually this apartment in New York City is the longest I've ever lived in one dwelling. I have been here for 12 years now, and I wasn't over 10 years in any other house during the rest of my life. So I've moved around. I am not dressed as any member of my heritage, as any ancestor, but I don't have to dress that way. I don't know how well you can see this, but are pictures of my great-grandmother on my mother's side. Those pictures, can you see them well enough? Can you see that they are at least, people.
Mhm.
That they were they are tinted photographs. Anne and John Brownsword are their names. They were photographed, I believe, in something like 1873 in England. They lived in Birmingham. And so those pictures came over on the boat with a working class family when they moved to the United States. They were definitely working class. They weren't coal miners, but they worked in bricks. They made bricks. And Anne came over after John died. He never came to the United States, but she came over with the two youngest children, one of whom was my grandfather, Ernest. And that was in 1892, the year Ellis Island opened. They came through, and there was already family in the Akron area, and so that's where they went to. And there was a colony of the family of Brownswords and Coopers, a couple of their last names, and so that's ancestors' shoulders on beings. I high regard for people that were immigrants that made the effort to come from one place to another. On my father's side, he was from Hungary. He was Hungarian, and his parents came over in 1910, and he was born in 1912. So the energy to pick up and go somewhere else, I have high regards for that, and it has given me courage. I've never traveled or moved that far. I've never moved from or to another country, but it gives me the courage to move around and look around and know that I can keep myself together in that way. So
Thank you.
hello all, good to be with you.
Jopi. Jopi.
Yes. Hey, everybody. So I am Zsófia Stranyicki, but I go by Zsófi. ZS is actually one letter in Hungarian, pronounced zh, like a zh sound. So like in leisure or pleasure, it's the same zh. I was born in Kolozsvár or Cluj. So Kolozsvár is the Hungarian name, Cluj or Cluj-Napoca, the full name of the town I was born in Romania, in Transylvania. I am actually a born Unitarian. And as you know, Transylvania is the cradle of the Unitarian faith that goes back to the 16th century. So I'm very proud of that. And I grew up and I did all my studies in Kolozsvár, Cluj. Although I did travel, so it's not like, I didn't travel before I finished university, but all my studies, including, postgraduate studies were done in Kolozsvár. And then I met my husband, who is from United States, and we sort of started living bicontinentally after we got married. We got married in 2006. Well, more or less since 2008, we've been living half the year in Europe. Our base is my hometown, Kolozsvár, Cluj, and then half the year in Houston, Texas. This is where my husband worked, and so this is where where our base is. And right now I am in Houston, Texas. So we are here from October through April, more or less, and then April through October in Romania. And tonight, can you see the picture a little? I try to dress like her, so wearing black and glasses. I normally don't wear glasses. These are my reading glasses. She is actually the recipient of this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology physiology and medicine. I
Hmm.
don't know. And Gabor, you may know her.
I know that I will recognize the name when you say, but she invented the mRNA technique.
Yes, she's the person who invented, or one of the, yes, she and her colleague invented the science behind the mRNA technology, or and making the vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines possible. Her name is Kariko Katalin. Let me say it other way. In Hungarian, we always say our last name first. So it's last name, first name. But so her first name is Katalin, her last name is Kariko, Dr. Katalin Kariko. And she's from Hungary. She left Hungary in 1985, I believe, with 900 British pounds, which it was around $1,250, sewed into her two-year-old daughter's teddy bear.
Hmm.
Because the communist government of the time, they only allowed more or less $100 to take out of the country. And the way they managed to get this money out of the country is by selling their car and buying British pounds on the black market. So this was in the 1980s. After she came to the United States, so she came as a researcher to the United States as a postdoctorate fellow, and she struggled for decades to stay afloat in the academy.
Academia.
Academia. That's it, how you pronounce it. In the academia. And many times she was demoted. She was left without a lab. She was left without financial support. But she never gave up. And her decades of hard work, as you see now, were crowned with success. So I chose to represent her tonight in honor of what she did for not only for the field of medicine, but for humanity as well. And I know that she has a lot more things to offer, and I know she's working on new applications, therapeutic applications on this mRNA technology.
Thank you. Jeannie.
Oh, okay. I'm in San Marcos, Texas now, which is a little town halfway between Austin and San Antonio, which are big metropolitan areas to us. And I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 1 month before Pearl Harbor was bombed, which got us into World War II, the United States. And my father worked for civil service, so taking care of military procurement. So that meant we were transferred all over the United States during the next several years. My mother was raised as a Arkansas farm girl. She was the only girl in a family of 5 boys. She was in the middle. They worshiped and idolized her. She worked on the farm with them, and she married my father when she was 15 years old, and he was 22. This must have been back in the 30s, I guess. And I think she had my sister when she was 16. She had me when she was 20 in Fort Lauderdale. He did get her off the farm. And I look back and I think, how and where did she learn to be such a mature, wonderful mother at 15 and 16 and 20? You know, she didn't think of herself. It was raising us. And like I say, my father was transferred all over the United States. We lived in so many different cities. one of the cities we lived in was St. Louis, Missouri. And when I was 12, we transferred to Huntsville, Alabama. And that's where we got to stay from the time I was 12 until the time I married. But when we first went there from St. Louis, Missouri, to Huntsville, Alabama in the 50s, which was a very Southern racist state, I went to school my first day, and the kids found out where I was from and how I talked, because I didn't say, "Hey there, y'all down yonder," they called me a Yankee. And I was 12 years old, and I went home and said, "What's a Yankee?" I didn't even know. And I think about my parents all during that time, living in that very segregated racial state in the 50s and 60s. And I never heard my mother or my father say a racial slur or anything that made me think that they were like that in that society. And so I really look back and respect that and admire that, and it certainly influenced me. So I'm very grateful to that. And during that time, if you remember, some people who lived in the United States back in that time, George Wallace, president, not governor, I mean, of Alabama, and the Supreme Court declaring segregation illegal, and all the race riots and everything that was happening, that was really a very horrific time. And I thank goodness for my mother, who was not like that and raised me in a way not to be like that either. So thank you, Mom.
Thank you. Gabor, you want to take a stab at it?
Oh, I see. I wasn't expecting to speak. Well, I was born in Hungary, and then we left a little bit before the revolution. So we actually just got out in the nick of time before the revolution happened. Lived in Canada for 5 years, then came to the States in '61. We actually immigrated through Halifax, and I've been back to Halifax recently. Really like it. So I think a lot of Hungarians came through Halifax. A lot came through New Brunswick, and there's a big Hungarian community in New Brunswick, pretty close to, not too far from where I live, in Morristown, New Jersey. And I came to Unitarianism as an adult. I didn't know anything about it, but then I learned, and I thought it was a good way to bring my kids up to think for themselves, and that paid off real well. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Do we have anybody else besides me?
Jan?
Jan Meslin.
Jan. Sorry, I missed you.
It's okay, and I haven't been to a Tuesday meeting for a while, so it's good to see some people that I know. Yeah, I'm Jan. I live on the central coast of California in a little town called ICUUW. I was born in Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic. I grew up there, and in terms of ancestor, I guess my mother is who I honor the most. She, one of the most kind and generous people. She just taught me generosity and to really work for and care for people that don't have the privileges I have. Just that's why I think I focused in on immigration justice. That's kind of what I still do a lot. But these days, my heroes tend to be like anti-war people, like Jane Fonda. She's been my hero since Vietnam, but Angela Davis even more today. And I recently heard her speak at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So she really believes in liberation and freedom for all people, and that until everyone is free, none of us are really free. So And she's always spoken up for Palestinian rights her whole life. And that just is on my mind all the time now. I'm fighting for the Palestinian rights to have, they need freedom and dignity right now, which they don't have. So I guess that's where I am. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Lee Boki Burke, living in Chelsea, Michigan. I was born in Ames, Iowa. One side of my family's all farmers. My dad was John Deere, straight down the line. Absolutely know that life, and learned a lot from it. Over the course of my life, I've lived on both coasts, in the middle, even lived in Germany for a while. But for a big chunk of the time, I lived in Wisconsin before we moved here 5 years ago. I chose, in part, I have to admit, because of the costume, to speak about Gertrude Ederle. And I don't know how many of you know who she is. Juliana, maybe. She was the first woman to swim the English Channel.
Ah.
She did this in 1926 when she was 20 years old. Only 5 other people had swum the channel before her, all men, of course. And when she swam it, they thought it was common knowledge that women had not the ability, the physical or mental strength to swim the English Channel. Well, she showed them, and she swam 2 hours faster than the fastest time to that date. Times have changed so much. Even though women swimming was still pretty new on the scene, her story captured the world. And when she successfully swam this channel, there were the biggest ticker tape parade in New York City ever held. I mean, since then, they probably had a couple bigger ones, but it was fantastic. And she was very shy. She was deaf. She kind of faded into obscurity, but she had a belief in herself and a belief in what women could do. And she really turned around the way a lot of people thought of what it was possible, not just in sports, but across the board for women to do when they put their mind to it. So she's the one I chose. She blasted through the limiting beliefs. So tonight we're honoring our ancestors, and it's also about the power of our ancestors and the power of who we are and what we can do. So now I want to hand it over to Jofi, who has put together our fearless executive director, who has put together a little program for us to kind of bring us up to date and remind us of all the great things that this group has been doing lately.
Well, thank you, Lee. I also want to, before we start, to thank the membership committee, not only for giving time and service to this organization, but also for your creativity in setting up this party, this coffee cocktail party. So I want to say thank you to you, Lee, Rini, Genia, and also Gabor, who is helping us making this event run smoothly. In keeping with the theme of this event, I will talk about how we as an organization have been good ancestors to women and girls worldwide. You notice that we started using ICUUW instead of IWC. And I know it will take some time to get used to it. ICUUW is the abbreviated form, International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women. And we that's the way we started out, using ICUW, but then we rebranded as IWC because our acronym was very close to ICUU, the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. And that created a lot of confusion, as you can imagine. We were often confused for ICUU. And now that ICUU is no longer in existence, we are going back to using ICUUW again. So I will try to use it in my presentation, and I may even have a slip of the tongue sometimes referring to IWC, but I try to do that. As an organization in special consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council, we have the privilege of participating in many activities and United Nations sponsored meetings as well. This year actually marked our first quadrennial report to the UN Economic and Social Council, outlining our contributions to the work of the United Nations in the last 4 years. We also took part in the 67th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. That's abbreviated as CSW 67, as you see on this slide. And 11 representatives attended this event in person, as you see some of our representatives at CSW 67, and many more joined online. We also hosted 2 events, and at this major event, and the recordings of both of them are available on our website and our YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet listened to them or seen them, you can always go and check them out on our website, on our YouTube channel. Yeah, the next slide is the flyers of the 2 events that we presented that I just mentioned. So these were the flyers for the 2 events. The one on the left was organized by ICUW's Young Adult International Network, which was a virtual year-long program providing a lot of opportunities for these young adults to connect and strengthen connections, and also to spark inspiration for their civic engagement, and not only globally, but also at a local or a community level. This summer, in partnership with Sankintay is the women's wing of the Unitarian Union of Northeast India, we raised funds on Faithify to provide a culturally and age-appropriate life skills and drug prevention program for hundreds of Khasi Unitarian children. And I want to thank you all who supported this noble effort. This February marked the launch of an initiative led by a former board member, ICUW board member, Noelle Lutomia. She is the founder of Tunaviri Pamoja, which is a women-led community-based organization in Western Kenya. In English, this means let's grow together. So Tunaviri Pamoja's young women's business program in a town called Mumias in Western Kenya is aiming to develop young Kenyan women's capacities for long-term success by providing knowledge, skills, and resources and tools. So basically training sessions regarding land and property rights, family planning, and business and leadership skills as well. Entrepreneurship was the first focus area. This was addressed in the spring. The Village Savings and Loans Association model was introduced to the participants, to give them an opportunity to create a savings culture and to facilitate borrowing from a common lending pool. During the summer, this program continued with property and land rights training. During the sessions, the women learned about how Kenyan and international law support women's land and property rights and the legal process of acquiring property in Kenya. The third focus area, the sexual and reproductive health and rights, is actually currently being addressed. As many of you are aware, last year's large-scale fundraising effort to supply assistance to families fleeing war in Ukraine in partnership with Convocation, this is the charity organization of the Hungarian Unitarian Church, raised over $100,000 from more than 480 donors. To date, our partner organizations, so Convocation, this in English, this means Providence. So the Convocation organization has delivered 10 aid shipments to Transcarpathia in southwest Ukraine, and additional 7 shipments, mainly consisting of hospital equipment such as medicines and medical supplies, have been sent to southern Ukraine, mainly to hospitals in Odessa and Mykolaiv. And on this picture, in the middle, you see the bishop of the Hungarian Unitarian Church, and also on the left, he's the one who's carrying all those non-perishable food items. That's the bishop of the Hungarian Unitarian Church. And the second in the group picture, the second from the left, is our board member, Gisela Nagy, and she accompanied the staff of Providence and the bishop of the Hungarian Unitarian Church on 2 shipments to Transcarpathia, and this is one of them, in April 2023. I also accompanied Providence on their aid relief consignments twice this year, in July and in October. These are the pictures, some of the pictures from the latest humanitarian action. And I chose these pictures with the baby because this, we really, I think all of us who were there on this aid shipment, so humbled. This is a baby that was born in a shelter. We visited a school that was turned into a shelter, and the baby's family had to leave. It's from the Kherson region, of course, eastern Ukraine, and their village now is under Russian occupation. They had to flee, their home was bombed, and so now the little baby, Alexander, with his mom and father and 2 siblings, so it's a family of 5, they live in this shelter run by the Reformed Church, the diaconal center of the Reformed Church, where we also took the supplies when we went. This is a family that would like to stay there, but they cannot afford it. So it was very heartwarming to meet them, meet that little baby, and who was born in this shelter last year, and meet his mom. We couldn't really communicate with them because they didn't speak English, and we don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, so we couldn't make ourselves understood. But it was great meeting them. This year, we continued to raise funds to sustain the education of 44 refugee children in my hometown in Kolozsvár, Cluj. These children are learning to read and write in Ukrainian Cyrillic in accordance with the national curriculum of Ukraine, which is very important because it will help them reintegrate in the Ukrainian school system once the war comes to an end, or they can integrate in various online Ukrainian education programs once they have learned how to read and write in Ukrainian Cyrillic. So that is a very, very important initiative run by Convocation, our partners in Transylvania. And I want to let you know that just today, we actually sent an additional $7,000 to support Providence's vital work for refugees and for those internally displaced. Last December, we received funding from the ICUUW funding program, and we partnered for this particular project, we partnered with Sueños Sin Fronteras de Texas, Dreams Without Borders of Texas. This is a woman of color-led collective in San Antonio, Texas. And the project provides participatory workshops for low-income, immigrant, and undocumented Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the San Antonio area, mainly to enhance self-advocacy and community grassroots organizing. There are several reports that we already have from this project. This is an ongoing project. This will be throughout this year. It's still ongoing. And in our latest newsletter, we publish something, and also in the summer newsletter. So you can find some information about it on our website. If you did not participate in our very successful annual gathering this year, which took place on October the 10th, I encourage all of you to go online and view the recording. So it's on our website, on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel. It will give you a more in-depth information about the work of both Sueños Sin Fronteras de Texas and our partners in Transylvania, the charity organization of the Hungarian Unitarian Church. So on this slide, you see a summary of a recently funded project by the ICUUW funding program, which will offer training sessions focusing on enhancing women's mental well-being and resilience in at least 3 districts of the Hungarian Unitarian Church. But the project has a broader significance as well, because it proposes to create a handbook based on the materials and the learnings of the program, which will be translated into English and then can be used or adapted in other Unitarian Universalist communities around the world. And the first training for this project is actually tomorrow. It starts tomorrow, Friday and Saturday of this week. We've been providing resources for congregations to plan a worship service around International Women's Day or Mother's Day. And we encourage you to make use of these materials. We have several years worth of materials on our website. And we also ask you that you encourage your congregation to schedule a shared offering or a special collection to support the work that we do. And that can be done at any time during the year. There will be a sort of a calendar even that we're thinking of creating right now, and Gretchen will be very involved with that in loading all the materials on the website. So it will be a Share the Plate annual calendar, and you can check that out once it's up and running on the website, which we hope by the end of the year we will have it up. And I wanted to mention that we've created a very beautifully designed Chalice Awards for congregations who dedicate a Share the Plate for ICUUW. So we would very much welcome your involvement to make this happen in your congregation, and the outreach committee would be delighted to assist you with anything you need to make it happen. And actually the logo of this design was, I have to mention this, is designed by one of our loyal members who is not here tonight with us, Sharon Van Dusen. Many of you may know her. She designed the beautiful chalice logo. So this organization, ICUUW, grew out of a convocation or a big gathering in 2009. And coming together has always been important to us. So the 4th International Convocation of ICUUW Women and People of Liberal Faith will take place in Kolozsvár, Cluj next year in September. The pandemic delayed this much needed opportunity for meaningful face-to-face connections, learning, dialogue, and sharing. And so we hope you can plan on being there. We will have registration, other information, including a pre-tour opportunity available at the beginning of next year. So by January, we will have that ready. So please plan on being there. We are currently raising funds to enable young leaders from around the world to attend this important event, the 4th Convocation. We will try to bring as many young activists to the convocation as we can. And right now there's a dollar for dollar match, in effect, to get us to the goal. And that's thanks to our a good supporter and member, Eric Schumann, who is not with us today. This is an all or nothing campaign, so we must reach our goal by the end of November to receive the funds that are already pledged. So we do appreciate your support in getting us to the goal. So if you haven't yet donated, go to the website or go to the Faithify site. This is a Faithify campaign. And, in any amount, donations in any amount, any contributions will be matched dollar for dollar. So please check it out on Faithify. Thank you. And thank you for your support. Our Tuesday gatherings are continuing, the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month. So if you are not already participating, please give us a try. I know this is not at a very convenient time for Australia, but it's like, I don't know, 2 a.m, midnight or 1 a.m. for you, Rini and Connie. But for the rest of you, if you haven't yet participated, or just come and check us out. And so it's always the second and the fourth Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So we invite you to stay updated through our social media pages. You see there, we are on Facebook, we have an Instagram account, a Twitter account, the YouTube channel. So just if you are active on social media, do follow us, give us a like, and that's one way to keep very updated with what's been going on with our organization. So at the end of this presentation, I want to take a moment to thank all of you and the members who couldn't make it tonight for the invaluable support you are giving to this organization. We could not do this work without you. So thank you for helping us, for helping ICUUW be the good ancestors, or become the very good ancestors to women and girls worldwide. And thank you.
Very nice, Sophie. Okay, at this point, we have planned some little breakout groups. This is what we'd like you to think about. Perhaps a little deeper discussion on how our involvement as IWC members helps move us closer to being that ancestor we admire and what we admire about him or her, and what we can do to help each other out to get there. Now, instead of having the whole somebody speak for the whole group and what everybody was thinking, we would like one representative from each group to focus on one thing that seemed to be most prominent in your discussion. And the person to report back will not be self-chosen, but will be chosen by the rest of your group based on the quality of their costume. Can somebody from the group 1 speak, please?
I was chosen to speak because of my Queen Mother's costume. And what we discussed a lot of things, but I think if we were to sum it in one sentence, it is about continuing to believe in our work and being inspired by others who do not give up.
That sounds wonderful. Would somebody like to speak from group 2?
I will.
Thank you, Juliana.
I think the main thing that we talked about, even though we talked about ourselves, was how we can get more younger women involved in the work that we do. We did not come up with a strategy, but we realized that's a very important thing to do.
Group 3?
We didn't appoint a spokesperson, but is it okay if I speak? I think the main thing that we just affirmed was our belief in the organisation, in ICUUW, and in the thought that the people that we help remind us in some ways of our own ancestors who had struggles in their lives, and that it's incredible what an impact we can have. If I've left anything out, people jump in.
We were going to ask Genia just to tell us, she mentioned during her check-in that she was born in a displaced persons camp. And how much it meant to her that somebody she never met cared enough about people stuck in camps to lobby for immigration change. Can you say a couple more words to that, Genia? Then we'll go to Rini to close us out.
I was born in Germany in a displaced persons camp at the end of 1945. When the camps were first set up, there was a belief that there were a lot of people who were imported to Germany and left there as, for work camps. And in the area where I was born, there were 100,000 people that were displaced, which meant that people came from, the Germans brought them in to work in that area of Germany. The concept of when the camps were originally set up was that people would go home, they would go back to where they came from, that the camps would be temporary. And many, many people did go home. But there was a lot of people, like my mother, where there was no home to go back to. The area that she came from, Poland, was bombed. It didn't exist anymore. And furthermore, it wasn't even in Poland anymore. It became part of the Soviet Union. She had no place to go. In the 5 years that I lived in the camps, we moved to 4 different camps. And each time I remember being put on a truck, an army truck. My mother would sit me in her lap and hold on to me for dear life so that she wouldn't lose me in all of this. And there was no movement because the borders and the immigration policies of the Western countries that could take us in were absolutely closed. They were not interested. In 1947, the UN started to take over the work of immigration, and they started trying to put pressure on US governments and other Western governments to open up to change their immigration policies, frankly. And what I learned back in the 80s, that there was a group of women who had organized in South America specifically to pressure the UN, to pressure Western governments to open up immigration. And in 1948, finally, the US started opening up their borders and allowing us to immigrate. My mother applied as quickly as she could when she was in 1948, but it took us to 1950 to get out of the camp. So I was in the camp from 1945 to 1950. And what I remember is how grateful I was when I learned that this group of women in South America that I never met cared enough about all of us to really pressure to change immigration policies. So what I'd like to leave you with is that the work that we do, even if sometimes we don't know, who is the recipient of that work and how it will change their lives, I can guarantee you that they will not forget us.
Thank you. Rini?
Well, thank you so much, everyone, I love that story, Genia. I never get tired of hearing it. And thank you very much, everybody, for being on the call today in Australia. And yeah, hope you enjoyed being together with us. We plan to host another call like this for members on International Mother Earth Day, April next year, Monday, April the 22nd next year. And this will be for those of us who have a special interest in, those of us who care deeply about the planet, climate change and the environment. So Lee's amazing daughter is going to be with us, and she's going to provide us with some input for what should be a really interesting conversation. She's the director and lead and analyst in the sustainable finance practice at S&P, which stands for Standard & Poor's Global Ratings. In this position, she provides analysis and opinions on environmental and social impacts of companies and specific investments. She's got experience in water and other infrastructure sectors. She's worked for the White House Budget Office, and she has a master's in public affairs from the University of Texas in Austin. She's been a guest speaker at several major international climate conferences on climate change. So we're really lucky to have her to be able to join with us. She's looking forward to being with us. And she's a lifelong Unitarian. She's travelled with Lee to visit Unitarians in Transylvania. So that's really special as well. So put that date in your calendars, the 22nd of April, 2024, and we hope that you can all come to join with us again. I was going to talk about the Tuesday gatherings, but Jacques has done a good job on that. And I was thinking if any of you have any other ideas for how we can build connections with each other as members of this organisation, please feel free to offer them to our committee or put them in the chat if you think of anything right at the moment. And in closing, I'd just like to refer to the Indigenous peoples in both of our countries. I don't know whether you've heard of the seventh generation principle, talking about, you know, the impact of what we do now, but it comes from the Confederacy of First Nations people in Northeast North America, and was used as a governing philosophy to conserve the land as well as deepen the relationship with other living beings. And basically it says that decisions and actions taken now can impact up to 7 generations down the line, so that when we're thinking mindfully about the choices that we make, we can think that this can have an impact 7 generations down the line. That makes my heart sing a little bit. It reminds me of that Australian song. There's an Australian song, From Little Things, Big Things Grow, which refers to Indigenous people slowly gaining some rights here. And talking about our Indigenous people, they have a very strong connection with their ancestors. And one of the Indigenous researcher, Cheryl Kickett-Tucker, she writes, an important source of strength lies within the stories of your mothers, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, cousins and elders. And, you know, you can include grandfathers, uncles, brothers, etc. Talk to your family and extended kin, know your history, appreciate their lives. Find your story, because knowing it is a key to your legacy. And when the gales of pain and trouble blow your way, you can count on your legacy to give you strength and spirit. And I really like thinking about that. And there's an American environmental writer and environmentalist, Linda Hogan, who says, walking, I am listening to a deeper way. Suddenly all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands. So on that note, I just encourage us all to become good ancestors and to rely on the strength of our ancestors to influence our thoughts and discussion, our beliefs and actions for today, so that we may impact future generations. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. It's been wonderful to see all your faces, because over here on this side of Australia, and not very many Unitarian Universalists, it's a learning process for me, learning about all of you people and connecting with you. So thank you very much.